Hey Point Forward family, today we are continuing our Run Smart series where we're talking about how we can be the smartest and healthiest runners possible. Today we are going to be continuing our conversation related to running related injuries, and today we're touching our first specific injury that we see most commonly, and that is runner's knee or patellofemoral pain. So what is patellofemoral pain? Patellofemoral pain is primarily pain that exists between the patella or the kneecap and the femur, which is the thigh bone. And the pain for patellofemoral pain is typically located on the front or anterior and medial or inside of the kneecap. And so that can be caused by a lot of different tissues. Sometimes it's caused by fat pads that exist between the kneecap and the femur. Sometimes it's caused by the cartilage or the bone underneath the cartilage that's getting irritated because of compression. And more rarely it can be caused by something called the medial plica. Like many other pain syndromes, patellofemoral pain can often be misdiagnosed as something that's actually something like a patellar tendinopathy or a couple other things that exist in the area where people experience pain related to patellofemoral pain. So when it comes down to it, patellofemoral pain is an umbrella term that describes a lot of different tissue sources that could be causing irritation in and around the patella. The reason that it's often called runner's knee is because of what we talked about in the last episode. There's a really high prevalence of this condition in runners, especially when you're a newer runner. The other thing that's typically found with runner's knee or patellofemoral pain is that it's happening in younger middle-aged adults without a specific mechanism of injury. So you typically don't have a big event that leads to this. It's more of an insidious onset where the pain just kind of started coming on and it's getting worse and worse over time. So what causes patellofemoral pain? You know, it's funny, despite how common it is, there isn't a one-size-fits-all cause that leads to this because there are a lot of different factors that contribute to this condition. One of these factors could be biomechanics, which is also known as kinematics, or the way that you're moving when you run. There's systematic reviews which take huge amounts of research and condense down all of the results to see what's consistent. And what's been found is that internal rotation of the hip is consistent among all the studies as being a potential predisposing factor for patellofemoral pain. Other biomechanical factors that have been found in the research have been hip adduction during your run, so that is when your hip goes from a straight alignment and angles inwards, which is also associated with knee valgus, where your knee drops in. Finally, what's been found with the combination of hip internal rotation, hip adduction, and knee valgus is that sometimes leads to the patella tracking a little bit to the side, to the outside, and laterally, which can lead to increased compression and strain through the patella. So whether you have a combination of hip internal rotation, hip adduction, or knee valgus, all of those things are putting increased stretch or strain to the inside or medial side of the knee, which can be causing additional compression and stress on those tissues, which can lead to their breakdown and potentially start to cause some pain. Interestingly enough, when they've looked at foot pronation or supination, there has not seemed to be any correlation between that and predisposing someone to patellofemoral pain. So the first major factor that you have to consider is biomechanics in the way that you're moving. The second major factor that can predispose someone to patellofemoral pain are neuromuscular factors, and that has to do with strength and coordination. There have been three major muscle groups that have been found to be weak in people who develop patellofemoral pain. Those are people with weak hip extensors, weak hip abductors, and weak quad muscles. But strength is not the only neuromuscular factor that's been found to contribute to people who have patellofemoral pain. It also has to do with the activation rates of those muscles. So in people who have patellofemoral pain, there's been found to be delayed onset of gluteal muscles as well as delayed onset of your quadricep muscles. And what delayed onset means is that when your foot hits the ground, your body should be preparing to land by starting to activate your muscles. But what's found in people who have this pain is that there isn't that early activation to prepare your body to land, which means that there's a higher impact when your foot hits the ground. A final factor is going to have to do with general muscle tightness or flexibility around the joint of the knee. So you'll obviously want to know what if your hamstrings, your quadriceps, even your hip flexors, and your calf, and how those are all interacting, and if there's any tightness that could be leading to increased compression or strain. So what causes patellofemoral pain? Ultimately, it's a combination of your biomechanics, coordination, and muscular strength, and how those contribute to how you're moving and what sort of stresses and strains are being put through the knee joint. So what this ultimately means is that patellofemoral pain typically isn't one of those things that you can just say, you know what, I'm going to give it some rest, give it a week, give it a couple days, and it's going to be just fine. Because the reality is that there are underlying biomechanical or neuromuscular changes that have to be addressed in order to prevent your body from experiencing the tissue overload of the structures in your knee. So that's a little bit more information on what patellofemoral pain is and what might be some of the causes. And in the next episode, we'll start to dive into what are some things that you can do to help if you are experiencing patellofemoral pain.